Hello everyone, and welcome to this month's episode or installation of Wander Lane. This month we are traveling to the Midnight Manor. So we're excited to be approaching this month. This is probably some of the most exciting months here would be Midnight Manor. Everybody couldn't wait to get to the Halloween house. So excited to be there here in February. We're just going to think of it as we are ahead of the game. How many months to get ourselves together now? So we're not behind. We're really far ahead in that world. So that is exciting. All right. So good morning. We're going to go ahead and get started here. Just want to check one thing before we do get started. How is everybody doing? Please join me in the chat. Keep me company. Let me know that you're here, where you're watching from. All right. Okay. This month we have our center house block like we normally do, and then we have 3 blocks that we're going to be making as part of our project. Let me hide this little guy. So we have our traditional house, and we have our bat, our pumpkins, and the half square triangle block, as she calls it in the book that we have here. We are going to start with assembling the base of our home. We will then also look at the bottom checkerboard, and then we'll travel over and start working on the squares for this month, and then we'll come back to the house and work on the ironing. Oh, you're very welcome, Miss Jackie. I'm glad to have you here. I'm glad that you're finding these helpful. So happy. Okay. So let's take a look at the background just so that we can make sure we know what goes where for this month's project. So when we do look at the, let me see, camera. Not that one. There we go. Not that one either. I'll get the right, there we go. I'll get the right image here eventually. We'll act like it's a Monday. It's been a day already. So we have 4 units that are pieced together to create our background square that our house will be applied to. So in the measurements that she gives you in your pattern booklet, she just gives you 4 background pieces, and she doesn't really designate what is to go where. So I just thought I would help you figure it out. So A is the 9 by 7.5, B is the 4 by 2.5, and C and D are technically the same size. They are 9 by 4.5. And one is 4 by 9.5. So they're close to being the same size. B and C are cut out of the same exact fabric. So you are welcome to make any changes that you want to this or rearrange anything in particular units. Just double check that you have in your laser cut kits and things that you have the correct amount of fabric to rearrange where they're at. We're going to sew these 4 pieces. So I sewed A and C together, and then B and D together. I pressed that seam open, and then I joined those 2 units together and pressed this seam open. And then once I have that together, we'll take the large base of our mountain or our ground yard for our house, and it's going to go at the bottom, it's going to basically use C and D. So you want to make sure that the gray floral is up at the top, and we'll apply the applique yard piece to the background fabric. And then we can set this to the side because we need to make the checkerboard that is on this particular project. Okay. All right. So the checkerboard is going to get cut out of this black whisper weave and the orange pebble piece that we have in our kits. 1.5 by 10. I sew them together with a 1/4 inch seam, and then I press this open just so that I have a nice flat seam there. I'm going to line this up on my cutting mat so that I have a nice straight edge. I'm going to get a rotary cutter. I'm going to square up just a little bit off this one edge here so that I can have a nice clean edge. And then we're going to subcut this into 1.5 inch units. So I'm going to measure over 1.5 inches, but I'm also going to put a line on my ruler right at that seam. That's going to help to guarantee that if this is straight and this lines up at 1.5 inches, then everything is truly straight or a square edge. If this center line lines up with your center seam and these do not line up, we need to re-square up the edge of our project. So line, line. We're going to subcut this into 6 1.5 inch pieces. So that's one more. Okay. So I have my 6 1.5 inch pieces that I am going to take to the sewing machine, and we're just going to sew together in alternating patterns until we have all 6 joined together. So I would sew these 2 together, these 2 together, and then these 2 together. I'll press those and then join these units together as well. Yes. Okay. So we'll do that when we get over to the sewing machine here in a moment. So Miss Jackie had a question about the other blocks that go with the house block. I do not press those seams open. I only press these open just so that I have them flatter, so that when I lay my appliques on them, they're not as bulky in that aspect. My pieced blocks, I don't typically press them open unless there is something in them that I think needs to be pressed open. Let's see. Let me grab my blocks here. So this was Shamrock Ridge. So I didn't really press any of those open. This was Liberty. No. Unless I needed to, I don't think I pressed them open for construction purposes. I did just leave them. This one I pressed open because we had a lot of really small pieces that were joined together. And this strips unit, this one I pressed open here because of all of those half square triangle seams that were coming together, but I don't do that on everything that's there. Okay. All right. Let's take a look at the first pieced block that we have for this month, and I'm actually going to jump to the half square triangle block. Remember now, all these blocks are going to measure 6.5 inches square. If you are making this block as part of the overall big quilt, the block of the month quilt. So if you're doing it for this purpose here, we are going to just make one of these. If you are doing this block as part of the individual monthly wall hanging series, you are going to make 4 of these blocks. And the colors combination of those blocks that you will find, you can see them on the front cover. You can see them better on the back cover as well, or you can make up your own combinations, completely your choice. So a couple of things that I would change, I'm changing with this block. One, I'm just going to fussy cut the center. It doesn't have to be this image in the center. You have that piece of fat quarter or that piece of fat eighth that you have in your kit that you got lots of. Yeah, so it's and you can find any of the graphics that you want out of this particular fabric. I've been using the same piece to get the last 2 months out of. Just gives me a whole piece left for another project for another day if I wanted. And then she asks for a 4 3/4 inch square and a 2 2-inch squares of our background fabric. And then we need a 4 3/4 inch square of our other colored fabric. I'm going to cut these as 5-inch squares. Okay. We're going to be making this into half square triangles. Okay. And I would rather my half square triangles be a little bit bigger so that I can square them down to the exact measurement that I need, which is going to be 8 2-inch squares that we're going to get out of this particular piece of fabric. Okay, and I just want to make them a little bit bigger. So I'm going to set these 2-inch squares out of the way. I'm going to take my 2 5-inch squares. I am going to place them right sides together. Okay, and I'm going to draw a line. I'm going to draw 2 lines actually. I'm going to draw 2 lines, one from each corner, okay, diagonally. Okay. And then we're going to travel over to the sewing machine. And we are going to sew a 1/4 inch from each side of the drawn diagonal line. So I'm going to draw a 1/4, I'm going to sew a 1/4 from here, a 1/4 here, a 1/4 here, and a 1/4 here. Okay, so let's come on over to the machine. Now, while I do this, I'm also going to sew together these pieces. So I'm going to kind of use these as leader enders to get this project started. So I've put these together, right sides together, alternating color. And I'm going to have my 1/4 inch presser foot on. I have a straight stitch plate on. I have neutral color thread, top and bobbin. I'm going to sew my 1/4 inch. I'm going to now take my 1/4 inch foot and I'm going to run it right on the outside of, here, let me say it again. I'm going to put my 1/4 inch foot directly on the line that I drew, the edge of my foot on the line that I drew, so that I will stitch a 1/4 inch away. Okay, and I'm just going to continue that all the way down. Get done there. I'm going to take another one of these sets. I'm going to put them right sides together. I'm going to feed them in. I'm going to grab my scissors and reach around the back here. Unclip this. I'm going to rotate this and I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch on the other side of this line. to the end, I'm going to take the other set of squares. Reach back here, clip that off. And then rotate. And now I'm going to sew on this diagonal line. Okay. Get to the end. I'm going to take 2 of these units and put them right sides together. Clip. And sew on the last side. And then join this last unit with this one. All right, cut that, and then we're going to come over to the cutting board, and we're going to cut some things apart. Okay, my checkerboard is now sewn. Okay, I'll go to the ironing board in a little bit, and we will press these seams open. And that way our strip set will be done and ready to sew to the bottom of our house block. We're going to cut this unit. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I need to cut this unit into basically rectangles and squares. I'm not going to cut on these lines yet. I want to come over to the middle of this unit. Now in the book, if you do the 4 3/4 inch square, she tells you that you're going to measure over 2 3/8. I did a 5-inch square, so I'm going to come over 2 1/2 from the edge, which should put me right at the intersection of my diagonal lines. Okay. I'm going to cut once, and then I'm going to do 2 1/2 on this direction. Okay. That's going to break me into squares. And now I can cut these down the middle on the diagonal line. And that is a quick way to get a bunch of half square triangles. Okay, so you have your half square triangles. The thing to note about half square triangles in this manner, you have to figure out the math for it to figure out exactly if you want to do it in all sizes. But we made these bigger, so I need to square them down. And there's a couple of ways to square things down. So I'm going to set 4 of them to the side because we're going to press those open and cut them down. These guys I'm going to square down with the folded corner clipper. Okay, so in my folded cornered clipper that I've got here, I am going to, here, let's do this so that it's right side up. I am going to place the line of the folded corner clipper. Okay, so I have my seam line here. I'm going to put that on the line that I just sewed. And I can see that I am larger than a 2-inch square, okay, which is what I want. That's why I had you make it slightly bigger, because I would rather square this down to be the exact size than for it to be short. So with that way, I'm just going to I'm not going to bring 2 inches right to the edge yet, because I want to cut a little bit off all sides. So I want to trim that side too. So I'm just going to bring it down a little bit so that I can trim the top dog ear and be able to trim this side off. Okay, there's one. And then I'm just going to kind of rotate this. I'm going to flip my ruler. I'm going to line up my line 2 inches with the bottom of the one I just trimmed, and I'm going to come up this side and come up the top. And now I have an exact 2-inch square. Okay, my line goes directly into the corner. Okay, so I'll show you again. Always takes me a minute to get everything oriented the way that I want. So, stitching line underneath the seam line. The first cut I'm going to do doesn't really have a measurement, just as long as my finished edge under here is at 2 or larger. Okay, second cut's going to go right at 2. And I'm going to trim those. There are instructions that come with the folded corner clipper for using it to trim half square triangles, so don't stress too much over it. You can, and if you've misplaced those instructions, you can go to creativegridsusa.com, and there is a link to all those instructions, so everything is still there for you. You can also see some videos that are there as well of somebody doing it. This one's still a little big. Okay. So those are exact 2 inches. I'm going to show you how to square these up using a traditional square ruler. Okay. So we're going to go to the ironing board and iron these first, and then we will come back and trim them up. So let's go over to the ironing board, and while we're here, we'll move this out of the way. While we're here, I'm going to go ahead and press these little guys open. Sorry, get the steam in my iron out. You can see I'm just setting the iron down on top of it. I am not moving the iron back and forth. I don't want to stretch or distort my fabric. Okay. Here is our our unsquared up half square triangles. Okay, I'm going to press the seams towards the dark. This is some place that you could press these seams open. Okay, it's completely up to you if you want to press them open or not. We don't have a lot of these seams do not come together to make a pinwheel or anything. They don't intersect with each other. So I don't usually press seams open unless, there's a lot of them coming together at one point, just to help reduce bulk. Okay. Let those cool while I go ahead and press these as well. I have my unsquared and my squared up ones. So now we're going to travel back over to the cutting board and we're going to trim these up. So you're going to use a square ruler. Okay, I like the diagonal line on a square ruler to be right in the corner. So I can line up that diagonal line with the diagonal seam line that I have pieced right down the middle. Okay, let me zoom in here. There we go. So we have this diagonal seam line traveling down the middle and just kind of have it centered over this square right now. And you can see that our half square triangle is larger than the 2 inches, which is good. That's what I want because I want to make sure that I can make it exactly 2 inches. So I'm going to keep this diagonal line on the ruler lined up with the diagonal line on the fabric. I like to trim a little bit off all 4 sides because if I just go and take this all off one, there's nothing saying that these edges that are underneath the ruler are straight. So I like to give the first side a little bit of a haircut. I take that square, I rotate it. The 2 edges that I just cut are now underneath the ruler. I'm going to line them up with the 2-inch line, and the diagonal line should go all the way up the middle. Okay, and then I'm going to trim the rest. The ultimate key to a good half square triangle is going to be that the half square, the diagonal line is right in the corner. Okay, if your diagonal line is not in the corner and is offset from the corner, you're going to lose a point, possibly lose a point. Okay, so I'm going to repeat this with our other pieces here. Jackie asked what kind of iron I'm using. I use a Lara Star. We sell them here at the store as well. It is a dry micro steam with a steam-based generator, basically. It's got a boiler tank in it. Okay, so again, diagonal line. And in the Lara Star, the one that's in the studio here is the Lara Star Lift. It's a portable, can be used with any ironing surface. In the store, we use a Smart I or Smart U. It's an ironing board and iron system. All right, last one. And you can see they were all just a little bit of a different size. So okay. All right. Now I have 8 identical far. Let's get you back in here a little bit. 8 identical half square triangles. Clean up all my mess. What we're going to do now is you're going to take your pieces and we're going to construct him. Okay. And I highly recommend that you pay attention to the graphic in the instructions, so that you follow and get your dark fabrics going in the right orientation, okay? So for me, I would sew these 2 together with 1/4 inch, so these 2 together with 1/4 inch. They should match the size of your 3.5 inch square, okay? And then you can sew those units to this. And then we have our 2 units on the side. There, and then we have this one here. That's also needs some squares. I didn't cut enough. Give me 1 second. Let's cut some 2-inch squares real fast. I only cut 2, not 4. Now, if you're not a fan of purple, you could easily change this out to be any color you wanted to be in your project. Okay, it's a 5-inch square. You have plenty of fabrics remaining from all our monthly kits that you could easily substitute out the purple for another color if you prefer it not to be purple. Okay, so I would sew these units together into 2 long rows and then join that to this middle unit, leaving you with a 6.5-inch square of your half square triangle block that she uses. Okay, completely up to you. You can press these seams open if you wanted. I would usually press them one direction or the other. It does not matter because we don't have a lot of bulk that's there. And then when it comes to sewing this to this and this to this, I would press these seams towards this center unit. And then sewing these seams, I would press away from center. Okay, I always tell my students the path of least resistance. That's the direction that you can press. Wherever the fabric wants to go is all that you need to press. There's no right or wrong. It's there. All right, that is going to be the autumn half square triangle block that we have. Okay. Next up is going to be our pumpkins. So our pumpkins feature 2 size pumpkins. We have a small pumpkin and we have a large pumpkin. Okay. And then we have 2 stems, a leaf, and some background. Okay. Now, I am just noticing that I cut my background out of gray and I'm thinking I want it out of white. I was wondering what that fabric was for in my kit. So small pumpkin is going to be out of the orange pebble. The large pumpkin is out of the floral. Okay, and then we have the stem, which is the darker green, and the leaf, which is a lighter green. And then you have background, and right now my background is cut out of gray, which would be just fine as well, but you do have in my kit, you do have a white that you can do this pumpkin out of. Yeah, he's meant to be white, so I'll recut that background. I was wondering what that was for. So you have all your background fabric. A lot of this is just kind of like jigsaw piecing, our traditional fold back corners with using all your pieces. And like I've said before, that I highly suggest that you label your pieces so that you can keep track of what is what, because we have a lot of pieces that are like 1 by 1 1/4, and that's just challenging to be able to just pick up visually. It's going to look like a 1-inch square, and it may not be the exact size that you need. So if we look at the small pumpkin, just so that you can see, okay, so our small pumpkin is L, and then we would take piece K. K is a 1 and a 1/2 inch square that's going to go on each side. No, this is D. K is going to be the other fabric. Okay, that's going to go here. So like we've done in the past, you are going to put them right sides together in the corners. You can draw a diagonal line if you would like, or you can use the corner clippers to pre-clip the corner, and then you're going to sew the 1/4 of an inch away. Okay. Just make sure that you clip the corner in the right angle. So make sure that you don't, that you get it going the right direction, especially on some of these that go in one side, not the inside side of the inside corner of the rectangle. Things along that lines, especially when we get down here to piece M, which is your large leaf here. M is going to get 2 background 1-inch squares. Okay. One is going to go in this corner, and one is going to go in this corner, and we're going to fold back and sew both of them that direction. And then once we have them together in units, then we will join them together, okay, to create our pumpkin square that is there. So let me back here. Okay. Now, if you are doing the monthly, full monthly wall hanging, you're going to make 4 pumpkins, of which they are all a different combination. I'm not going to sew mine right this second because I am going to recut my background fabric to be the correct piece, but it would work fine with that gray as well. And then with this, if you're doing the full quilt, we are just making 1 pumpkin, okay, for this project. So if you're making the full one, we only need 1 pumpkin. Okay, it'll live down here in the bottom. But if you're doing the full wall hanging, you'll need 4 in 4 different combinations. Okay. All right. Last up is going to be our bat. And with our bat, there is a pattern correction. So here is our bat. Pretty easy for the most part, but we do have we have some directional fabric. We want to make sure that we cut everything going in the right direction so that our stripes will go the right way. And then we also have a pattern correction for this month. So on page 4 of your booklet, if you look at figure 4 in the booklet, you will notice that top, okay, the far left hand side, the letter unit that contains E and P, the P is being attached to the incorrect side in that graphic. So you want to make sure that you pick that graphic up and make that change, or you can include a note in your booklet. If you look, I'm going to bring this over here. So if you go to arttoheart.com, in the upper section there is corrections, and right there you'll find corrections for the 6 different corrections related to Wander Lane. Some of them, depending upon when your pattern was printed or your booklet was printed, they may have been corrected in that second printing. So just double check, but you can always download it, and then I would download it and like paste it or staple it into my book so that I can have it as a reference later if I decide to do this again or anything along that lines. I know that my booklet has the correct, but I would probably cut this out. Now I made this bigger you'll probably, when you do it, it may come out to be sized enough that you can just pop it right over top of figure 4 right here. Paste it in place, and then you'll be good to go, and you won't have to recut those 2 particular units and not have a bat that has a wing going the other direction. Okay? All right, let's look at the directionality of this bat. He is done with a stripe, okay, that we need to verify is going to go in the correct direction, okay, that we want our bat to, his stripes to all go the same way. So I'm going to walk you through how to get that to happen, okay. So give me 1 second. I'm going to reach out here and we're going to label these so that I can make sure that it's all correct myself. So fabric L is 1.5 by 3. Okay. And then J is going to be 1.5 by 2.5. Okay. So L, J, and K is going to be 1 by pretty sure, yeah, I did write them on the back last night. All right, so L, J, and K, or J, K, and L. Let's put it in alphabetical order, Amy. Okay. J, K, and L are going to be cut so that the stripe travels. Let's pull this down here. That the stripe. Hold on 1 second. I gotta find the right fabric. There. That's L. There we go. I'll get there. That the stripe in J, K, and L are going to run the length of the unit, or they're going to run along the longest measurement. So, for example, J is 1.5 inches wide and 2.5 inches tall. So therefore, my stripes are going to run up and down. Now you have plenty of fabric to make mistakes and recut something once you get your, start putting your bat together, or if you make an error. Okay, so J, K, and L are going to run that direction. Okay, I doesn't matter because I is a square. Okay, so he will come into play when we go to put him together, which direction we use him. So I does not matter. All right, M, N, O, and P. Okay, so let's see. Did I stop? Yes. M, N, and O. Okay. And somewhere there are 2 little tiny squares stuck somewhere, but that's okay. M, N, and O, it is the stripe is going to run across the smaller measurement. Okay, so M, for example, is 2 inches by 1.5. So the stripe is running the 1.5. The same with O and N and O. P is also a square, so P does not matter because he is a 1.5 inch square that is currently missing from my stack at the moment, so gosh knows where he's. Oh, there he is. There he is, P. So it won't matter when it comes to using P, because we'll just make sure we place him in the correct orientation for this piece. Okay. All right. Does that make sense? Hopefully. Okay. Now, putting together this bat is very much like putting together the pumpkins. Everything is basically graphically just a jigsaw. We're going to stitch and flip, stitch and flip, placing. I've not had enough caffeine yet today. Placing the triangles in the correct locations to build your bat, and then you will have a 6.5-inch square for your bat. For the wall hanging, you need 4 bats. Each one is out of a different fabric. And if you're doing the full-size quilt, we just need to make 1 bat. And if the concept of this stripe is just too much for you, feel free to substitute out this into any colored bat fabric you would like. Okay? It does not need to be the gray stripe. And then we have the background, which is the white with the little gray branch and blue berries that are there for this, and we would then build from inside of there. Okay. All right. That is going to be our bat. We're now going to go over and work through the assembly of our house. So let's take a look at that. We'll put that there so that you can see it, and then we're going to come over to the ironing board. Okay. All right. So this is the house that we're going to go ahead and applique and get him ironed in place. Note that the bats that are in the moon are actually buttons, and the berries that are on the crow branch are also buttons. So they're not actually applique pieces that we are going to be using. Okay? All right. Let's take a look over here. I have my applique placement sheet. I'm going to put my mat on top, and we're going to build from the ground up, and I'm actually going to start with the pumpkin unit, and then I'll move to the house, just because that pumpkin's got lots of less pieces to it than the house does. So we're going to carefully get out all our pieces here. Pull out my big pumpkin. And then we have a little pumpkin. There is a leaf that is on that pumpkin. Let me get a picture here so that I can see where he is to sit. So that leaf looks like he sits on top. I think may be that leaf. Okay. Do I have any other questions while I stand here and peel all this stuff? I just want to make sure that I have answered what you needed. I'm going to take my stem. Okay. That's that. And then the last thing I have is the face of the bigger pumpkin. So I'm going to do his mouth. I know there's been a lot of interest in quilting this as you go and assembling a quilt as you go. I will talk more about that again once we get to that point of assembly, or in a later month I'll get some of mine. Hopefully I'll try to. I wasn't planning on doing it quilt as you go, but maybe I will do mine as a quilt as you go, so that I can better demonstrate. It's hard to see and understand without everything being visually having an example. Okay, I'm happy with where everything is. I'm going to kind of hold on to his mouth and this one eye here while I carefully set that down. I didn't want it to blow off. I'm going to go ahead and just give this a light little press. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab my bird too. He's not attached to this because his legs are stitched. We talked about that last month. So his legs are actually a stem stitch or a back stitch of your choice. So he's actually going to go up here. Get his wing. All right, so I'm going to carefully peel those pieces off for the moment, and I'm going to lay them to the side. We'll come back to them once we get our house created. Okay, so with our house, don't need to worry about the moon right this second because that'll get appliqued or ironed down once we do our final placement. Peel my house off here. Let's get my house in place. Okay. And then we have a purple door, where you have a door. Just gonna kind of peek up under here to see he's supposed to live right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and tap that in place so that he doesn't move on me while I deal with all these pieces. So I'm gonna work with the roof lines first. So I'm gonna clip the tops of my windows off. those out of the way. Clip off the piece. Okay, so this is gonna go like this. Okay, that's where he's going to land once we get him trimmed up or peeled off. Takes a minute to get everything to lay exactly where you want. And I think for me, this spot right here in the center is the most important because I want to make sure it covers up both of the fabrics underneath. So I'm going to get that to be exactly where I want it to be, and I'm going to tack it in place. That way this won't move anymore while I fiddle with positioning the rest of this. Fix that in a minute. Let me get we have the legs to our awning here that we need to get in place as well before we iron down this side. Okay, so don't get too excited and iron it completely down because the leg needs to go up underneath of this roof. I'm going to take a peek. I can kind of see it sticking out right from there. Okay. Once I have that one in place, I'm going to iron him down. Get that one in place. Fiddle with this other roof line here. Okay. There is that. We now have a chimney to put on. Okay. We have a round window. The larger round window is going to go I want to check to see. Okay, so the larger round window is going to go underneath the ghost. So I want to just kind of fold up. I think I'm pretty good with where that is at. So I'm actually just going to stick a pin in him for a moment so that he doesn't move on me. We have a smaller round window that is going to go above the doorway. Okay. And if I look at that, we get our ruler out. If we want to be exact, we can eyeball it. We don't need it to be just like the pattern, but just in case, just about 1/4 of an inch above the top of that. It's actually a little less than 1/4, but, and he is kind of visually centered over the front door. Okay, I'm going to take and put a pin in him. And then we have 4 windows that are going to go on the house. We're going to get so let's take a look at these windows. So these windows are about 5/8 of an inch up from the bottom, and they're about 1/2 inch over from the side. Okay. 5/8 up, 1/2 inch from the side. Pin that one. There is 1/2 inch between, and it looks like another 1/2 inch before we get to the other side. So 5/8. Take another window. Okay, and that puts that just about. All right, I'm just going to put a pin. I'm just going to very lightly tap the edges of the bottom half of this window. I don't want to, the ultimate goal when you're stacking up, well, not the ultimate goal, the biggest problem that you can have when you are ironing multiple layers is over ironing, and then basically you deactivate the glue and it doesn't stick anymore. So I don't want to over iron. So I tapped the bottoms in place so that I could get that on, and then I'm going to take the tops of these windows and put them in place. There it is. And then I'm just gonna tap those. And now we're going to put the other windows above it. Those windows, there is about 1/4 of an inch from the tops of the window points. Okay. And I can look at the line on the house and be like, okay, that lines up with that one. And then, that's okay. 1 second. Okay, I need to change it. It's fine. I can't do anything about it now. On the web tab. Yep. All right. And then tap that one in place. Take this last window. Line him up, and somewhere I've lost the top of a window somewhere around here. I will have to go back and find it. But who knows where it may have gone. I may have to make another one, but that's okay. I should have pinned him to the ironing board. He'll turn up. So I'm just gonna tap that one. I'm gonna verify that I'm okay with those points, and I'm gonna tap these in place, this in place. I'm gonna get my ghost. My ghost is going to line up with the bottom of that window. And we'll tap him. Okay. Now, oh, I think I found the roof. Yep, I found the eave to my window. But in the meantime, that moved. Let's fix that. While it's still warm, you can carefully peel it up. That's the other reason why I don't do a real heavy press when I am setting all of this, because if I make a mistake or something moves in the iron, I can fix it. All right. There is the house. And we're going to get the background fabric now. And we're going to slide this out of the way. We're going to grab our background fabric. Background fabric, you would apply this to the bottom. I'm just going to put my house on it to start with, because that's not going to get sewn into there. It's not important. All right, so when we look at this, we see that these pumpkins need to sit behind this leg of the porch. So I'm going to take and get this little guy. I can also see that she has it positioned so that this leaf kind of hits right at the top of the yard. Okay. also don't want his mouth covered. And then we need a moon and a bird. Okay. Moon is going to go behind the smaller eaves. Kind of your choice as to overall, you know, the look that you want. Okay, take a look at it, make sure I'm happy with where everything is. He may need shorter legs. I feel like he's a little more. Okay. Once that's all in place, I'm just going to take my iron, set it down here. I'm also double checking that I've left a 1/4 inch seam allowance on all the edges, so nothing's going to get cut off when I go and sew this together. I'm just going to give it an iron from the back as well. That way it's on the heat's directly on the glue side. I don't want to get too hot with it. There it is. And then I'll go to the machine and I will sew on my checkerboard at the bottom of this project. All right. That is going to be our Wander Lane Midnight Manor block for this month. So there is the house. The eyeballs, the bats, and the berries are going to be buttons. We have some hand stitching to do for the one pumpkin vine, the branch that's in the bird's mouth. And then we have 3 French knots that are the 2 eyes in the ghost, the eye in the bird. Oh, and there's also a button for the doorknob as well. So that will all get attached. You're going to want to do your French knots and your branch and vine before you do any quilting. Buttons do not get attached until after all the quilting is finished. That way you don't have to worry about it when you're blanket stitching. You don't have to worry about it when you're quilting, or your long armor doesn't have to worry about accidentally hitting them. And then you'll attach them at the end, which we'll also talk about on our final wrap-up session in a few months. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining me this week, this month, and we'll see you back here next month as we travel to the mistletoe crossing, and we're headed up to Santa's workshop for the December themed Wander Lane house. I hope that everybody has a great rest of this month, and that we'll see you back here real soon. Thanks, everyone, and if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to comment below, send us an email, and be sure to like and subscribe. We really appreciate all the support.